Wilson, we meet face to face. Although we had dinner last night.
You have a very intimidating presence. I remember when we were meeting up for dinner. I was like, this guy's gonna kill me.
I'm tall.
Yeah.
And I'm
just
young.
Just ruthless looking.
Tight skin, intense eyes. Yeah.
It's a very intimidating presence.
Oh yeah, dude. People ask me for directions all the time. I'm like the guy that's trustworthy. They're like, that guy's harmless.
Yeah, he's totally just the kindest guy ever.
My buddy said that. My buddy, I was talking about, I don't know, fighting or something. My buddy's a UFC heavyweight, and he goes, hey, you're not tough. He's like, in fact, if anything, you're on the other side of that equation. I was like, hey, man, it's my bone structure. I can't help it.
It's messed up.
Yeah,
it's messed up. Well, for the audience who's watching, you did a sexism last night at dinner.
Did. Oh, I did, didn't I?
You did a sexism.
Yeah.
Bryan's wife. So for those of you who don't, Bryan's wife called him out for a sexism. So waitress came over. And he was like, look, I really want to get a bottle of wine. My friend's here from out of town. I want to treat him to a nice dinner. All the things you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And he had some questions about the wine. She's like, well, I haven't really tasted the wine. He's like, do you think get one of the guys?
That was a good impression of her, by the way.
Yeah, so do you think
hold on. That was a very sexist impersonation because you went,
yeah, it was, well, I mean, that's what they all sound like to me. But anyway, so Bryan says, look, can you get one of the guys over here who have tasted the wine? So, and his wife's like, you said one of the guys. Like, why couldn't it be a girl? And ironically enough, it was a female manager who came over. It was a female
sommelier.
Yeah, it was a female manager.
And that was a good wine. Over. She done well, right?
I mean, it was a good wine, but I feel like that was in spite of her. I feel like it was just because you made the choice and she was going to reaffirm the choice no matter what.
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, that's the wine.
Yeah.
It's good. That's a good place.
It was a good place. Yeah, it was very good.
We touched on something. Last time we did a podcast, we left it on the idea that regardless of where you stand philosophically, you are going to live within parameters.
Yeah.
And no matter who you are, whether you're on the left, on the far left, on the right, on the far right, you establish parameters. And usually you argue over those parameters. You argue over the lines in which you are willing to fight for. That's kind of what happens, right? So if you're a typical academic liberal, you might argue, to borrow from Jonathan Haidt, that is it fair and does it do harm? And if it violates those two principles, then we have a huge problem. But you can violate all the other principles like sanctity and authority and loyalty. That's not really hurting anybody, right? And so
duty.
And duty. And these are the things that conservatives tend to hold closer. And it might be a personality trait. But you and I always talk, what I really appreciate about whenever you kind of argue is you're essentially arguing not just for parameters, but the parameters on which you argue have a Christian basis. Yeah. And not just that, they really are the parameters that the West has built everything that we all seem to flock to around. And do you think that's a good argument to make?
I think it is. And the other thing is, so you bring up something which is interesting. It's the idea of universals. That's what you're really talking about.
That's the only thing I care about.
Yeah,
really.
It's like, what is like universal ethics here? When you talk about the harm principle, think about it. Think about why the left uses the harm principles, because they think of it as a universal.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Well, nobody likes to be harmed. Nobody likes to suffer. Nobody likes this. Nobody likes. So they're actually trying to smuggle a universal in, aren't they?
Yes.
Yes. That's really what's going on. It's like, well, this is something we can universally apply to everybody, except you can't.
Right.
You still can't apply that universal because it's just not true, right? It's like, no, people like suffering.
They do.
For instance, they love lifting weights. Yeah. There's a lot of suffering there.
So is sacrifice, by the way.
So sure. Yeah. And duty.
Yeah.
Duty can be suffering.
And I'll suffer for a while now so that there's a payoff later, And
so this the whole harm principle thing, it just kind of, I just reject it. But
Bryan Callen had on Andrew Wilson to do the most boring podcast ever known to man. Didn't Andrew Wilson, the last clip I seen of him, he was against that chick. She brought up, like, he wifed up some chick who had, like, 3 kids with 3 other dudes or something. I don't know. It's pretty funny watching how defensive he got during that, though. Because isn't it his whole thing, like, the red pill, the manosphere thing? I don't know. I'm aware of those guys, but I never, like, none of their content is ever recommended to me. Because, I get chicks. So. But did you hear during that Bryan Callen say, My buddy is a UFC heavyweight. Andrew Wilson knows who Brendan Schaub is. Bryan Callen knows, everybody watching knows who Brendan Schaub is. Bryan Callen knows he's associated with him. So now Callen is now trying to distance himself from Brendan Schaub, my UFC buddy who was a heavyweight. Like, we know you're talking about Schaub, but Callen is that ashamed and that embarrassed, and he doesn't want Schaub tainting, because this is Callen on his own podcast, and I guess he was able to get Andrew Wilson after he was on Rogan. So I guess that's going to be Callen's strategy. Guy goes on Rogan, and then Callen tries to get him on his podcast. Should Callen just start like a Joe Rogan after show? That wouldn't be a bad idea. Joe Rogan does an after show. Just have Jamie and Bryan do it. Like Stern used to have the wrap up show or something. But I mean, Callen, what he has to do, he can't just distance himself. He has to completely cut off Bappa. And then his career will take off. Just like everybody else who got away from Bappa. Theo Vaughn, Mark Harley, Kat, Chappelle Lacey, Malik. Browse is doing stand-up or something. Everyone who gets away from Schaub, I mean, Callen sees that everyone who gets away from Schaub does better, but he can't just distance himself. He has to completely get away from Bappa. And if you truly ever wanted to just take over everything, he would turn on Bappa and the entire Rogan sphere. But Callen would never do that. Callen doesn't even really need to do that. As much as he bitches and moans about money and stuff, at the end of the day, his dad was in the CFR and he's got like a bunch of dough in his family. So at the end of the day, all of these guys are ultimately fine because they're all just rich kids. But I mean, Callen's very upset that his career has completely failed. It's tanked. His stand-up special flopped extremely hard, especially since he's comparing it to like Schaub's special, even though Schaub bought a bunch of fake bot views for it. But he's also comparing himself to everyone else, and he's like, why doesn't the Rogan bump work anymore? And it doesn't, because he's got the residency at the mothership and everything, and it's just not helping the career. But I can see why he's frustrated and why he's trying to distance himself. But he needs to fully turn on that redact Bappa. And then Callen, you'll save yourself. But will Callen actually do it? I doubt it. But let me know your thoughts in the comments.